Her name is Emma Taylor. She was raised in an affluent neighborhood in Connecticut, the kind of place where lawns are trimmed like hedges in a postcard and families look perfect from the outside. But behind the white picket fence was a truth no one ever dared to say out loud. Emma wasn't really theirs. Her parents never officially claimed her, never fully loved her, and when a tragic car accident left her unconscious and clinging to life, they walked away. They told the doctors she wasn't their daughter. They refused to authorize surgery. They left her to die. But Emma heard everything. What followed was not just a story of survival. It was a reckoning. A battle for truth. A war against silence. And when she rose again, she didn't just heal. She rewrote the ending they tried to deny her. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments below. From the outside, our house looked like something out of a magazine spread. White colonial siding, navy blue shutters, flowers blooming along the walk in perfect symmetry. We lived in a quiet neighborhood in Connecticut where families waved from porches and holiday decorations went up like clockwork. My parents, Peter and Linda Taylor, were active in the community. My younger sister Chloe was the kind of child people stopped to compliment in grocery stores. And then there was me, Emma, the older daughter, always clean, quiet, polite. You'd think we had it all. Maybe we did. On paper. But reality doesn't show up in photo albums. My earliest memories were full of smiling faces, birthday balloons and coordinated outfits. But there was a dissonance under the surface, something I couldn't name at the time. I just remember that no matter what I did, Chloe always came first. If she threw a tantrum at a restaurant, it was strong-willed. If I followed every rule without being asked, I was predictable. Her B- was brilliant. My straight A's? Expected. One day I asked why Chloe's drawing was on the fridge while mine was tucked in a drawer. My dad chuckled and said, "Your sister needs encouragement." You don't. I was 8. By 12 I'd stopped asking questions. Until one night I woke up thirsty and went downstairs for water. My parents didn't hear me. They were in the kitchen mid-argument. Their voices weren't raised, but they were sharp, cutting in that adult way that makes kids freeze. "You always favor Chloe," my mom said in a hushed tone, pouring herself more wine. "I think you're overcompensating for Emma not being yours." "She's not yours either, Linda," my dad snapped back. "We agreed when we took her in. No favoritism." Clearly that was too much to ask. I dropped my glass. It shattered loudly and the voices stopped. I bolted upstairs and dove under the covers. My heart pounded so hard I couldn't tell if it was fear or betrayal or both. "Not yours." That sentence etched itself into the walls of my brain. The next morning I sat at the breakfast table with a knot in my stomach. They acted like nothing had happened. My mother hummed while slicing fruit. My father read the paper. Chloe was chattering about school. I waited. Waited for someone to explain, to say it wasn't true. That they loved me just the same. I couldn't take it anymore. "I heard you last night," I said quietly, my voice shaking. "I know I'm adopted." The silence that followed stretched too long. Then my father lowered his newspaper half an inch. My mother didn't even look up from her coffee. She just smiled. A tight practice smile. "Don't be ridiculous, Emma. You must have been dreaming." And that was it. Not a denial. Not a confirmation. Just gaslight and toast. I learned something that day that stuck with me for the rest of my life. In our house, truth had no place if it threatened the illusion. After that morning, I stopped waiting to be chosen. I stopped trying to earn love and started chasing achievements. If I couldn't belong emotionally, maybe I could prove my value in other ways. I excelled at school. I joined every extracurricular. I volunteered. I cleaned up Chloe's messes. I carried the weight of being perfect because I thought perfection might buy me belonging. But it never did. The more I accomplished, the more invisible I became. At her worst, Chloe was still the golden child. At my best, I was just expected. One Christmas she failed her chemistry final. She was grounded for a week. I got accepted into MIT on a full scholarship the same week, and all my mom said was, "We're not surprised, honey. You always overachieve." Eventually I realized they weren't parenting me. They were managing me. As if I were a task to be checked off a list. As if I were a favor they were tired of pretending to enjoy. Hook. I spent my childhood trying to earn love that should have been freely given. And when I realized it never would be, I started building a life without it. But no matter how far I ran, there was always one person who saw me. Not the perfect student, not the placeholder daughter. Just me. And her name was Martha Taylor. My grandmother. The only one who looked at me and didn't see a burden or a project. Just a girl who deserved to be chosen. And so, every summer I found myself packing a small suitcase and heading north, to the only place that ever felt like home. And that's where this story truly begins. The first summer I spent at my grandmother's house, I was 13. My parents told everyone it was because Chloe needed extra attention that year. But I knew the truth. They wanted me gone. Martha Taylor, my father's mother, lived in a tall, aging Victorian in a quiet New Hampshire town, filled with creaky floorboards, cinnamon-scented air, and shelves that groaned under the weight of old books and older secrets. From the moment I stepped inside, it felt like the air changed. Nobody expected me to be perfect. I was just Emma. Every summer I returned. I helped her in the garden, we read aloud on the porch, and she taught me how to make apple pie from scratch. But more than anything, she listened. Martha had the kind of stillness that made you want to speak. And one afternoon when I was 15, I asked the question that had lived at the back of my throat since that night with the shattered glass. Do you know who my birth mother was? She looked at me for a long time, her eyes soft and unreadable. Then she reached out, gently touched my cheek and said, "You have your mother's eyes." It was the first time anyone had acknowledged I had a history that predated the Taylors. "She loved you very much, Emma," Martha whispered. "But she couldn't keep you. One day when the time is right, I'll tell you everything." But that day never came. Every time I asked, she postponed it. After high school. After college. When you're ready. When you've lived a little more. I accepted the silence because it was different from the denial I'd grown up with. Martha's silence came from pain. My parents' silence came from shame. During those years, my relationship with Peter and Linda grew colder. They showed up at milestones, graduation award ceremonies, but only as an obligation. At MIT, I built a startup with my best friend Samantha. We poured our 20s into it. When we landed our first round of venture capital funding, I called Martha, not my parents. She cried on the phone, told me she knew I would build something world-changing. One Thanksgiving 3 years ago, we all sat down at the same table for the last time. Martha was friendlier than I remembered, but her wit hadn't dulled. The conversation turned to my company's breakthrough in AI diagnostics, and Martha beamed with pride. "I always knew Emma would do something extraordinary," she said, raising her glass to me. My mother's response was a quiet dagger. "Yes, well, she's always been determined to prove herself." Something in me snapped. "Prove myself?" I asked, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. Peter looked up from his wine. "Most adopted children go through a phase of overachievement. It's quite common." The room went still. Samantha, who had joined us for the holiday, froze mid-bite. Even Chloe looked stunned. "Dad," she said slowly. "What are you saying?" "She's known since she was 12, Linda chimed in, waving it off. "No reason to dwell on it. We don't need to make things uncomfortable." I stared at them, my chest pounding. "You denied it every time I asked. You made me feel crazy for even suspecting it." Peter's tone shifted into the patronizing calm he used in court. "We thought it was better that way. Children need stability." "I needed the truth," I said. Linda's voice went sharp. "We gave you everything. A home. An education. Opportunities most adopted children only dream of. You should be grateful." Before I could reply, Martha slammed her hand against the table, the sound louder than anyone expected. "That's enough, Linda." But it wasn't. Not for me. 2 decades of being the backup plan, the performance piece, the placeholder daughter rose to the surface. "You never wanted me," I said. "You wanted someone who would make you look good. You wanted a daughter who wouldn't ask for real love." I stood. The napkin dropped from my lap to the floor. "I'm done trying to earn what should have been freely given." I left that night and never looked back. I changed my number, got a new apartment, and lived quietly. The only person I kept in touch with was Martha. We met for brunch every Sunday, a sacred ritual that made the rest of the week tolerable. Once she told me softly over coffee, "They do love you, Emma. They just don't know how to show it." "Love isn't supposed to feel like this," I replied. She didn't argue. 3 months later, she passed away in her sleep. I was in San Francisco on business. My parents never called. Never texted. I found out through an envelope from her attorney. Inside there was a letter and a will. Emma Taylor had inherited everything. What I didn't know yet was that her death would be the first domino. Because fate was about to reveal the truth no one else had the courage to say aloud. The letter arrived on a rainy Tuesday. I had just returned from a conference in San Francisco, exhausted, barely unpacked, when I saw the thick envelope with my name written in elegant handwriting. It was from James Callahan, Martha's attorney. I sat down on the edge of my bed, unzipped the envelope and pulled out two things: a formal letter notifying me of my grandmother's passing, and a copy of her will. She had left me everything. The house. Her savings. Her private library. The small art collection she cherished. It was all mine. My hands trembled as I read the list of assets, not because of what she gave me, but because I hadn't even known she was gone. No phone call. No message. No obituary mailed by my parents. Martha had passed away quietly and they hadn't even thought I deserved to know. The funeral had come and gone without me. According to James, it had been sparsely attended. Just a few neighbors, an old friend from the church, and of course Peter and Linda Taylor. They'd come not to mourn but to inquire about the estate. James said he could feel their disappointment when he read the terms. They'd left without comment. But they weren't done. I spent the next few days processing the grief alone. Grief that felt messy and unfinished. She was my anchor, the one person who had never asked me to be someone else. And I wasn't there. I had missed my chance to say goodbye. But the world doesn't stop when your heart does. Business continued. Deadlines loomed. Samantha, my business partner and best friend, tried to convince me to take time off. I told her I'd rest after we launched the new AI module. She didn't push, she knew better. We both threw ourselves into work as we always did when life became too much. That Thursday evening, the rain hadn't let up. A soft, persistent drizzle blurred the city lights as I walked to my car. I remember checking my phone and thinking about calling a car service, but my apartment was only a 15-minute drive away. I was tired, emotionally spent, and I just wanted to go home. That decision nearly cost me my life. At the intersection of Maple and 3rd, a pickup truck ran the red light. The driver was drunk, unfamiliar with the area, and speeding. I never even saw him coming. One moment I was listening to the low hum of traffic, the next there were headlights, too close, too fast. Then everything fractured. Metal crunched. Glass exploded. The world spun. Later they told me my car flipped twice before hitting a street lamp. The airbags deployed, which probably saved my life. But the impact shattered my collarbone, broke 3 ribs, and slammed my head so hard against the window that I suffered a traumatic brain injury. I remember flashes. Sirens, red lights strobing across my eyelids, someone shouting my name. Then nothing. When I became aware again, I couldn't move. Couldn't open my eyes. Couldn't speak. I was trapped in a body that wouldn't respond. But I could hear. I could feel. I was there, beneath the silence, listening to everything happening around me. A doctor explained my condition to someone. I couldn't tell who. We've reduced the swelling in the brain, but the next 24 hours are critical. She's in a medically induced coma to manage the pressure. Then came the question that made the air feel colder. Have we located next of kin? A nurse replied, her emergency contact is listed as her mother. We called. They're on their way. Somewhere in the stillness of my mind, I hoped that maybe this was the moment Peter and Linda would finally see me. Show up. Choose me. They arrived within hours. I recognized my father's voice first. Controlled, detached. Then my mother's, clipped and sharp. What exactly are you doing for her? She asked, as though the trauma I'd endured was a scheduling inconvenience. We're preparing for surgery, the neurologist answered. She needs authorization. There's a fracture near her orbital bone and will need consent for treatment. A silence. Then my mother's voice, cold and certain. There's been a misunderstanding. She's not our daughter. The room fell still. I'm sorry, the doctor asked, confused. She was adopted, Peter added, his tone so smooth it made my skin crawl. But the paperwork was never formally filed. There's no legal guardianship. We're not responsible for her. Every part of me screamed. I wanted to move, to open my mouth, to tell them I was there, that I could hear every word. But my body refused. Without authorization, the doctors hesitated. It was a nurse, Emily, who argued to keep me stable. Who said, this woman is alone. We can't just let her die. And all I could do was wait. Caged in my own mind, surrounded by people who had always treated me like a burden. And now they were ready to bury me. But I wasn't dead. Not yet. And when I came back because I'd make sure they regretted ever pretending I didn't exist. Time dissolved into a fog of shifting voices and pulsing pain. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. But I could hear everything. I heard machines beeping steadily beside me, voices coming and going, sometimes calm, sometimes urgent. I heard someone gently adjusting my blanket. And I heard what it sounds like to be abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you. The neurologist's name was Dr. Chin. She spoke to Peter and Linda with a quiet authority, calmly outlining the risks of the surgery I needed to survive. A fractured skull. Brain swelling. Facial trauma. The longer they waited, the greater the risk of permanent damage or death. I wanted to shout. To scream. To beg them to sign. But all I could do was lie there while my parents discussed my life like it was a complicated invoice. What kind of costs are we talking about? Peter asked flatly. We'll need insurance information, Dr. Chin replied. But time is critical. Surgery must be authorized soon. Linda responded with the cold certainty of someone washing her hands. She isn't legally our daughter. We have no obligation. I felt the edges of my world tilt. After a lifetime of being treated like an afterthought, now I was disposable. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Literally. Left to die on a hospital bed. A nurse's voice broke through. She listed you as emergency contacts. That carries legal weight. Linda's voice sharpened. We've explained. The adoption was never formalized. We're not her family. Not really. I don't know how long I lay there listening to them walk out of the room, the click of Linda's heels echoing like a final verdict. The door closed. Their voices faded. They were gone. It wasn't disbelief I felt. It was confirmation. But not everyone left. Nurse Emily Davis didn't just stay, she became the reason I survived. I heard her speaking to someone, her tone steady with barely concealed fury. They walked out. Just walked out. I've never seen anything like it. They refused treatment? Another nurse asked. Flat out. Said she wasn't their responsibility. Emily paused, then added, but she is someone's. So we keep her alive until we find them. From that moment forward, Emily became my lifeline. Every shift she talked to me as if I were fully awake. She told me the date, the time, the weather. She played music. Classical, jazz, sometimes Taylor Swift when the mood struck. You look like a Swiftie, she'd say, laughing softly. Hope I'm right. She gave updates. She explained every treatment. We're cleaning your wounds now, Emma. The antibiotics are doing their job. You're stable. You're safe. Her presence was the only warmth in that sterile room. And slowly, thanks to her, I realized I wasn't entirely alone. Somewhere out there someone might care. 3 days after the accident, I heard a new voice, Samantha. She had found out from the hospital after Emily tracked down alternate contacts. I heard her crying as she signed the consent forms. Heard her say, do whatever it takes to save her. I'll cover the cost. That moment changed everything. With her authorization, surgery was scheduled immediately. I remember being wheeled away, bright lights above me, the chill of movement. Then blackness. When I came to again, I was in recovery. The pain in my head was sharp, hot, but I could feel my fingers. I could twitch my toes. Emily was there whispering, you did it, Emma. The surgery went perfectly. You're still here. The next few days were a blur of slow, agonizing progress. I squeezed fingers on command. I blinked twice to answer yes. Eventually, I opened my eyes to white ceilings and sterile light. The breathing tube was removed and I coughed dry and weak as my voice croaked out one word. Where? Emily leaned into my field of vision. Massachusetts General. You're okay. You're going to be okay. But I wasn't okay. Not in the ways that mattered. Because the real injury wasn't just physical. It was knowing that my parents hadn't failed me in a moment of panic. They had made a choice. A conscious, deliberate choice. To leave. To let me go. To deny I was ever theirs. That truth seeped into every part of my healing. I endured the pain of cracked ribs, the dizziness of standing for the first time, the trembling weakness that came from muscle loss. But nothing hurt more than the memory of their voices saying I wasn't worth saving. Samantha visited every day, bringing my laptop and company updates. You're recovering faster than anyone expected, she said one afternoon. I smiled weakly. Spite's a powerful motivator. But the emotional wound wouldn't close. It ached deeper than the scars on my face. It lived in the silence where their voices should have been. And then, in my second week at the hospital, Samantha gave me the news that cracked it all wide open. "Emma," she said gently, "your grandmother's attorney has been trying to reach you. Your parents, they're contesting the will." I blinked slowly. "On what grounds?" "They're claiming you're mentally incompetent. That your brain injury makes you unfit to manage the estate." I stared at the ceiling. The betrayal wasn't over. They had left me to die, and now they wanted to steal what Martha left behind. But I was awake now. And I was done being silent. The day I spoke with James Callahan for the first time since the accident, I was propped up in a hospital bed with a brace around my ribs and healing fractures along my face. My voice was still hoarse but steady enough. Samantha sat beside me, arms crossed, jaw clenched. James arrived with a leather briefcase, dressed in a simple gray suit, but everything about him felt unshakably composed. He greeted me formally. "Miss Taylor. I'm relieved to see you recovering. Your grandmother would be very pleased." "They're trying to steal her house," I said, wasting no time. He nodded. "They filed for an emergency conservatorship 2 days after your accident, citing your medical condition as proof of incapacity. I've already submitted medical statements confirming you're competent. The judge has frozen the estate until a hearing." "Do I have a case?" His expression softened slightly. "Emma, you are the legal beneficiary of your grandmother's estate. Your adoption was formal, binding, and properly documented. What they told the hospital, about the adoption being informal, is a lie. I have the original paperwork. And something else." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. It had my name written across the front in Martha's familiar cursive. "She asked me to give you this if anything ever happened to her before she could tell you herself." My hands trembled as I took it. It felt heavier than just paper. I waited until later that night, after the last rounds had been done and the room was dim except for the lamp beside my bed. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. And beneath it, official documents. My original birth certificate. The adoption records. And, most striking of all, a photograph I had never seen, of a teenage girl with the same green eyes I saw in the mirror. My mother. Martha's letter began, "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, I failed to keep my promise to tell you everything in person. Forgive me. Some truths are harder to say aloud." She explained that my birth mother, Caroline, was her niece. Caroline had gotten pregnant at 18. The father, her high school boyfriend, had vanished the moment he found out. Martha had suggested adoption within the family. Her son Peter and his wife Linda had been trying to conceive without success. It had seemed like the perfect answer. I was placed with them just weeks before Linda discovered she was pregnant with Chloe. Martha continued, "I believed Peter when he promised to love you as his own. But I saw year after year that something never clicked for them. They treated you like an obligation. And I'm sorry, Emma. I should have stepped in. I should have said more." At the bottom of the letter she wrote, "You are my family by blood, by law, and by heart. Everything I leave you is rightfully yours." I cried, not from pain, but from the strange release that comes when the fog lifts and everything you suspected is suddenly, undeniably real. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't ungrateful. I wasn't imagining the difference in their love. They had lied to the hospital. Lied to me. Lied to everyone. And now they were trying to use my accident, the very thing they walked away from, to take what Martha left behind. The next morning I called James. "I want to fight this," I said. "All of it." He didn't hesitate. "We'll need to secure the property. They still have keys. I want the locks changed. Cameras installed. Full remote access. I'll handle it." I turned to Samantha, who had been sitting quietly nearby. "I'm not just going to protect what's mine. I'm going to expose everything." We spent the next few days gathering evidence. Samantha compiled phone logs from the hospital, texts, emails. Emily, my nurse, told us about the hospital security footage, cameras inside my room that had recorded everything Peter and Linda said. "We can subpoena it," James confirmed. "It directly contradicts the affidavits they filed." I wasn't healed yet, not physically. Every breath still hurt. I moved slowly. I slept badly. But something had changed. This wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. This was about truth. I began drafting a letter. I wrote and rewrote it 20 versions or more. Some were dripping with rage. Others clinical dry. None of them felt right. You're overthinking it, Samantha told me one night. Just speak from your heart. My heart wants to burn them down, I said. Then say that. I shook my head. This isn't about fire. It's about finally being seen. That's when I realized I didn't need to destroy them. I just needed them to look at what they'd done and be unable to look away. The final letter was honest. But it wasn't cruel. I included every legal document. Every proof. And I ended it with something I hadn't planned on writing until the words appeared of their own will. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Hook. I didn't write that letter to start a war. I wrote it to end one. And when the time came, I wouldn't hand it to them myself. I would leave it waiting. Right where their lies had always been the loudest. The old Victorian house sat quietly at the end of the street, its shutters closed, its porch empty. But inside it was no longer a place of silence. Security cameras had been installed in every room. Every hallway. Every angle that mattered. James Callahan placed my letter carefully on the dining room table. The same table where I had sat across from Peter and Linda, pretending to be part of a family that had never truly claimed me. Saturday arrived gray and still. Samantha and I sat together in her apartment, my laptop open, the camera feeds live on screen. At 2:03 p.m., the familiar silver Mercedes pulled into the driveway. I leaned forward. There they are, I said quietly. Peter stepped out first, checking his watch. Linda followed, her face wearing that forced smile she always saved for charity events. Behind them, Chloe climbed out, slower, hesitant. Her expression was unreadable. We watched them try the front door. Peter jiggled the knob, frustrated. The key isn't working, he muttered. Try the back, Linda replied. I shouldn't have to use the back door. This is my mother's house. Chloe corrected softly. They circled around and minutes later a locksmith arrived. We watched him work. Paperwork exchanged, signatures collected, door opened. They stepped inside. Linda went first. Everything looks the same, Chloe murmured, her hand running across the sideboard in the hallway. It should, Linda said. Your grandmother had excellent taste. Peter moved quickly. I'll check if the silver is still in the master bedroom. We watched him disappear upstairs as Linda scanned the living room. This would look perfect in our foyer, she said, picking up a vase. Mom, Chloe said sharply. We're here for Dad's keepsakes. Not to redecorate. Linda didn't respond. Then they entered the dining room. Peter's gaze landed on the envelope immediately. What's this? He picked it up, frowning at the handwriting. It's addressed to Emma, Chloe noted. She's not here, is she? Linda said, already reaching to take it. She tore it open without hesitation. As she read, the color drained from her face. Her fingers began to tremble. What is it? Peter asked. Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. He read it fast, jaw tightening with each paragraph. This is outrageous, he snapped. It's lies. Twisted, manipulative lies. Chloe reached for the paper, but he pulled it away. This doesn't concern you. It absolutely does, she said, snatching the letter from his hands. Her eyes scanned the page quickly, then more slowly. Her lips parted as she reached the section about the hospital. She says you told the doctor she wasn't your daughter, Chloe whispered. That you left her there. Linda dropped into a chair. It wasn't like that. We were in shock. The doctors made it sound hopeless. Chloe kept reading. You said you owed her nothing. That's taken out of context, Peter said. It was a complex situation. Chloe's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and typed in the URL printed in the letter. I had uploaded the hospital footage to a secure link. We heard the tinny echo of their voices over her phone speaker. She's not our daughter. We're not responsible for her. Don't contact us again. For a long time no one spoke. Chloe stared at them. You left her to die. Linda opened her mouth, then closed it. Peter stood silently. She's your daughter. Wiggly. Emotionally. In every way that matters. And you threw her away. She was never ours, Linda muttered. Chloe recoiled. How can you even say that? She manipulated your grandmother, Peter snapped. She poisoned her against us. No, Chloe said. She told the truth. And you just didn't want anyone to hear it. She picked up the rest of the documents on the table. The adoption papers, the will, the confirmation that I was, in every way that mattered, their child. I'm going back to my apartment. Don't call me. Chloe, Linda started. But Chloe was already walking toward the door. On the screen we watched them stand in stunned silence. Then Linda turned furious. You've turned her against us too. She's the one who called Emma her half-sister, Peter said coldly. Well, she is, Linda muttered. And now look where that's gotten us. They'll use this video in court, Peter snapped. We need to call Gerald. Maybe we can argue it was altered. Deep fakes are everywhere now. I sat back in my chair. Their words no longer cut. They sounded desperate. Hollow. Samantha looked at me. Exactly what we expected. I nodded. They haven't changed. They never will. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It read, Emma, it's Chloe. We need to talk. Please. Hook, she had read the whole letter. She had watched the whole truth. And now, for the first time, she was choosing to face it. The cafe on Cambridge Street was crowded but quiet enough for conversation. Rain had fallen earlier that morning, leaving the air outside sharp and clean, the windows of the cafe streaked with mist. Chloe was already there when I arrived, seated in the far corner by the window, a mug of coffee cooling in front of her. She stood when she saw me, startled by how I moved, slower with the aid of a cane, my facial injuries still visible beneath light makeup. Emma, she said softly, half reaching for a hug then hesitating. I gave a short nod. We settled for a polite, awkward greeting. I sat across from her and adjusted my cane beside the chair. She pushed a fresh coffee toward me. Black, 1 sugar. You still take it that way? I took the cup, surprised she remembered. Thanks. She fidgeted with the handle of her mug. I didn't know, she said finally. About the hospital. About what they said. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, I said, and I did. Whatever Chloe had been, she had never been cruel. Just complicit in a system she benefited from. She looked down at her hands. I read the entire letter. I watched the video. God, Emma. I don't know how they could do that to you. To anyone. Let alone you. I nodded, letting the silence hang between us. She had more to say. I waited. When you left that night at Thanksgiving, I thought you were being dramatic, she admitted. I told myself you were always so intense, always trying to prove something. But reading what they did, what they said, she paused, swallowing hard. They didn't just abandon you. They erased you. My throat tightened. I took a slow sip of coffee. Did you ever notice, Chloe? The way they treated me? Did you ever think it was off? She met my eyes. I noticed. But I told myself it was because you were older. Because they expected more from you. Or maybe I didn't want to look too closely. Because if I did, I'd have to admit they weren't the people I believed they were. I nodded slowly. That's fair. Chloe leaned in. What do you want from me, Emma? I don't know what to do. I just know I don't want to keep pretending. I looked at her, really looked at her. My sister. My half-sister. The one who had everything I wanted, who had grown up with love I had to earn. And yet here she was now, stripped of that security, grappling with the same betrayal, trying to reach me. I don't want anything, I said, then paused. I'm not here to test you or make you feel guilty. But if we're going to try and be anything, sisters, friends, then it has to be real. No more pretending. No more rewriting history. She nodded, eyes glassy. I can do that. I want to do that. The conversation shifted after that. We talked about her medical residency, my company's recovery since the accident. We didn't mention our parents again. Not directly. Then she asked, what did the letter say? The one you left for them. I opened the file on my phone and read it to her. Every word. From the denial at the hospital to the legal documents attached to prove who I was and what I owned. I didn't sugarcoat it. And when I got to the end, the part that read, I forgive you not because you deserve it but because I deserve peace, she covered her mouth with one hand, tears slipping down her cheek. That's the most honest thing I've ever heard, she whispered. And the saddest. I said nothing. There was nothing else to say. Chloe wiped her eyes and composed herself. They've called me 6 times since we left the house. Left messages about how worried they are about you. About how they want to help with your recovery. They live in an alternate reality, I murmured. She gave a dry laugh. They always have. Then she hesitated. What happens now? With the guardianship case? The inheritance. James is handling it. The hospital footage makes it pretty hard for them to win. After that, I move on. Without them. And me. Her voice was smaller now. Hesitant. I studied her face. I saw our childhood there. The good, the painful, the silent truths between us. I don't know yet, I said honestly. There's a lot of damage to unpack. She nodded quickly, looking away. Of course. I understand. But, I continued, we can start small. Her eyes snapped back to mine. Small steps. Small steps, I confirmed. Hook. We finished our coffee not as sisters made whole, but as women learning how to face the wreckage. And sometimes that's enough to begin again. 3 weeks later, Chloe called again. But this time it wasn't just to talk. They're filing to contest the adoption, she said. They're claiming Grandma Martha coerced them. That they never wanted to adopt you in the first place. The words should have crushed me. But all I felt was clarity. Let them. By the time Chloe told me they were contesting the adoption, I felt nothing. No fury, no shock, just a stillness that told me I had finally stopped expecting anything else. Peter and Linda weren't trying to win anymore. They were trying to hurt me. It was all they had left. They're saying Grandma coerced them into taking you in, Chloe said over the phone, her voice hollow. That the adoption was never truly voluntary. They signed the papers, I replied calmly. They raised me. They claimed me when it was convenient. Their denial now doesn't erase 30 years. I'm so sorry, she whispered. It's like, they're not even the people I thought they were. I let that hang in the air before replying. They never were. She paused. I moved out. I'm staying with a friend from the hospital. I couldn't stay there, Emma. I couldn't sleep in that house after what I heard. That hit me harder than anything else she'd said. Chloe was grieving too, grieving the parents she thought she had. Despite everything I felt for her. After a beat, she asked hesitantly, Your house. Grandma's house, it's big, right? I smiled slightly. Are you inviting yourself to live with me? Just temporarily, she rushed. Until I find a new place. Only if you're comfortable. The idea took a moment to settle. It was a big step. But maybe it was time. The East Wing has its own bathroom, I said. And I'm rarely home before 8 anyway. Silence, then a shaky laugh. You mean it? Small steps, I replied. A month later, I moved into Martha's house officially. It was early spring. The porch still smelled faintly of cinnamon, just like it had in those summers long ago. I kept most of the original woodwork, updated the plumbing, added light in places that had long been too dark. Chloe moved into the East Wing. The first few weeks were awkward. We circled each other carefully, relearning boundaries we'd never really understood growing up. But we respected each other's space. We started talking more. Cooking together occasionally. It was quiet progress, but it was real. Emily, the nurse who never left my side in the hospital, visited regularly. She had taken a new job with a home care agency but always found time to stop by. Samantha came by almost every weekend. She and Chloe grew surprisingly close, bonding over their mutual fondness for late-night reality TV and sarcasm. James Callahan joined us for Sunday brunches, continuing a tradition I had shared with Martha. One Sunday he looked around the table, Emily laughing, Samantha debating with Chloe, and said, You've built something solid here. Chosen family, I said gently. The best kind. That same week Peter and Linda filed a lawsuit against me, emotional distress. They claimed the letter, the video, and the estate outcome had caused them psychological harm. It was desperate. Transparent. James handled it swiftly. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, ruling that truthful speech could not be considered harmful. In his written opinion he stated, the plaintiffs abandoned their daughter in her most vulnerable state. The defendant merely documented it. The case made the local news. Word spread quickly in Boston's professional circles. Their carefully cultivated social image collapsed. Country club memberships canceled. Former colleagues kept their distance. Their law firms severed ties. Within a month, Peter and Linda left the city. No goodbye. No apology. Just gone. Are you okay? Chloe asked the night we heard. I thought about it, really thought. Yes. I think I am. Because the truth was, they had walked away from me long before they left Boston. and I had spent far too long waiting at the door. With the legal battles behind me, I turned my focus back to the company. Our next project, inspired by my own recovery, was a communication tool for patients trapped in comas, like I had been. We called it BridgeCap. It monitored brain activity and eye movement, offering a way to determine consciousness earlier and more accurately. It would have helped you, Emily said one night. It would have helped the doctors, I replied. I already knew I was still in there. The work gave me purpose. Turned my pain into something useful. Something powerful. A year to the day after the accident, I hosted a dinner at Martha's house. The dining room was warm with conversation. Samantha arrived with her new partner. Emily brought her wife. James poured champagne. Chloe sat beside a kind-eyed neurosurgeon she'd been seeing. I looked around the table and felt a quiet completeness. I stood, raised my glass. To family. Not the one we're born into, but the one we choose. The one who stays when it matters most. Glasses clinked softly. Later that night, Chloe joined me on the porch swing. We sat in silence, the twilight humming with the sound of summer insects. Do you ever wonder where they are now? She asked. Sometimes, I said. But it doesn't hurt anymore. She looked at me. How did you do that? Make it stop. I thought for a long moment. I stopped expecting them to be something they never were. And I built a life that doesn't need their approval to matter. She nodded slowly. I'm still working on that. It takes time, I said. But you don't have to do it alone. Hook. And in that moment, beneath the soft creak of the swing and the fading summer light, I realized I was no longer surviving them. I was living, finally, on my own terms. And that's how it happened. The girl who once sat silently in the shadows of a picture-perfect family found her voice, her truth, and a home built not on obligation but on choice. I didn't get the parents I deserved. I didn't get the childhood I needed. But I got something stronger. I got freedom. I got clarity. And in the wreckage they left behind, I discovered something they never could give me. Peace. Sometimes the family we're born into is not the one we're meant to keep. And sometimes, it's in the darkest moments. The silence of a hospital room, the loneliness of a courtroom, the ache of a dinner without them, that we finally begin to see who we really are. So tell me, have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel seen or simply reminded you of your own strength, please like, share, and subscribe. Someone out there might need to hear this more than you know.